It is indeed an honor to be back with you all. It's been a long summer in a sense. I've been absent more than usual, and I've been on some life-changing travel that one of these days I look forward to talking to you about in more detail. I was invited on a trip with a former student, now pastor, Dr. Leonard Ezell, to be a dialogue partner on a journey through time. It sounds strange. I joined him on an epic journey back through time some 12,000 years ago to the Fertile Crescent, into Turkey and the Syrian border. The purpose of the trip was to go to the birthplace of religious worship, to the very first building that humanity has ever recorded that we have been able to uncover. It was quite a journey. It's called Göbekli Tepe, and there are some 20 circular buildings that are approximately 33 to 98 feet in diameter, and they have these large T-shaped monoliths that, again, how do they move them up these hills? And you know all the things that you know from Stonehenge and all. Only this is about 4,000 to 5,000 years before Stonehenge, so it's quite early. There are totem figures carved into it, like maybe with arms that show that maybe they're talking about becoming a part of the fox community or the water buffalo community or something like that. But it's just fantastic to realize that the oldest permanent buildings of any kind on the earth, pre-pottery, pre-written language, were dedicated to the human need for dialogue with God. Let that sink in a minute. So for me, an ordained pastor for 48 years, licensed to preach for 52 years, to touch one of those stones and realize I'm touching the beginning of the entire vocation that I find myself in. And that humanity first gathered together. These are hunter-gatherers who found the time, the energy to put into building places of worship, was for me incredibly life-changing, profoundly moving, and I'll be reflecting on this for the rest of my life. So it's also a surprising coincidence that the choice of scripture for today, Genesis 32, happens to take place in in Haran. Well, I was standing in I was standing in Haran, and I found it just fascinating. Remember, this is the birthplace of where Abraham came from. He was from and his people went to a new land in Canaan, and then what happens here is the whole where this story kind of takes place. It is a coincidence that the protagonist of this story happened to be in the same vicinity. It's a beautiful place with a lot of where 2,000-year-old architecture is considered new. It's fascinating to be there because then you realize, wow, this is the Fertile Crescent. This is between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This is where we talk about life beginning, civilization as we know it. It was 106 degrees, mind you, but only 8% humidity. So you never sweat, you just passed out. That's kind of how it works. You had to keep drinking or you would just pass out. The land grows pistachios because it's dry enough that they don't form mold and things like that. The land is abundant with dates and figs and saffron and olives. And between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, they can grow any number of things. It seems arid on the top, but don't be surprised. Underneath, there's incredible fertile soil. But also, as the farmers find out, the fertile soil, just dig a little bit deeper, and you come upon ancient artifacts. And if you bump into those, then the government will come in and say, okay, this is now an archaeological dig site. And so they have to move on. So the farmers try and keep it just on the surface. But this is also where we find Jacob, and he's the first complex figure of the Old Testament, the book of Genesis. He's the first really complex character. Others are more typeset. But Jacob is different. He's the grandson of Abraham, the son of Isaac and Rebekah, and the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. He's a complex personality. His story reads like a soap opera, and I mean, you can name it. It seems like every kind of drama that you've seen in soap operas, right there in Jacob's life. His name, when Christina was reading and talked about he was given a new name, you will no longer be called Jacob, you will be called Israel, for you have wrestled with God. Israel means to wrestle with God. And what does Jacob mean? Heel grabber. Heel grabber. He is one of twins, and he's born, and he's pulling at his brother's heel to keep him from being born first. He is a heel grabber. He is going to make his way by his own achievement, and that's the way he becomes marked. Jacob, the heel grabber. And he's not going to be left behind. Though born second, he buys his brother's, Esau's, birthright. The oldest one in these times has the birthright to the family property, land, has the first. He buys it. He waits until his brother is in great need and hunger, and then offers to sell him a bowl of soup, to which his brother Esau says, I'm starving, I'll take it. You can have it. And he buys his brother's birthright. Then, if that weren't not enough, he goes to his dying father Isaac, who is blind, and he says, I'm Esau. It's time to pass the blessing on to me. And he takes his brother's blessing from his dying father who can't tell the difference. He even goes so far as to put a furry animal hide on his arms to make it feel like the hairy-armed Esau had come to his father. Here, it is me, feel my arms. Oh my goodness, he's a trickster. The world is not going to wait for him, and he is not going to wait for the world. He is going to take charge, and that's exactly what he does. He takes charge. But as you can imagine, Esau vows, I will kill Jacob the moment Dad is gone. The moment Isaac is gone, no more Jacob. Esau is coming after him. Esau, knowing that, his brother's rage, and, well, he may have burned a few bridges there in Canaan, goes north, right to where I was, to to Haran, to his uncle Laban's place. And while he is there, he falls in love with Rachel, Laban's second daughter. And Laban says, fine, you work for me for 7 years, and you can marry Rachel. Well, okay. Did anybody say that a biblical form of marriage is at least not what it may sound like? You may have heard, what is a biblical form of marriage? It's complicated. It's really complicated. And this is the first place it becomes very complicated. Because after working for 7 years for Rachel, Laban gives him Leah. And he goes, wait a minute, what? There's a rabbinic story. I love the rabbinic story. The rabbi tells it like this. He says that on the morning of the next day after the big marriage feast and everything else, Jacob looks at Leah and goes, wait a minute, you're not Rachel. You're Leah. You tricked me. You and your father tricked me. To which Leah, not batting an eye, looks at him and says, let me get this straight. You literally stole your brother's birthright. You tricked your dying father, and now you're worried about somebody tricking you? A trickster is as a trickster's got. You are in the world of tricksters. To which he goes, but I love Rachel. I'll work 7 more years. And that's what he did. 7 more years he works. And oh my goodness, at the end of that, he is allowed to marry Rachel. And then he realizes, I'm done with this. I need to get away from my father-in-law, Laban, my uncle, and head back to home. So that's what he says, I'm going home. They said, okay, let's separate what you've worked for in terms of livestock and goods and that kind of thing while you've been here with me. And he tricks his father-in-law and takes more than his share and takes off. Jacob is in the world of tricksters. And if you've watched tricksters on television, you know they're going to get caught at some point. Catch Me If You Can. You remember that one? Leonardo DiCaprio. Eventually he's going to get caught. Eventually Tom Hanks is going to catch him. But the fun of the movie is watching how it gets to that point. Better Call Saul. You see him escape, and you go, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? He didn't know Carol Burnett was going to get him in the end. She was going to name him out. It's a fascinating thing to watch a trickster. You cheer for them, for their cunning, their smarts, but at the same time you worry for the moment that it all comes crashing down. I think about the television show Poker Face. Has the same kind of thing. She's always on the move, always on the move. And now the new one, Lucky, she's always on the move, always on the move. And you begin to go, yeah, there's that. How can you be one step ahead to move on? When are the walls going to begin to close in? And they do begin to close in. And that's when Jacob realizes that going back to Canaan, going back home, means he has to face who? Esau. Maybe Esau's dead. Maybe Esau has forgotten all about it. And then maybe not. What you hear in the scriptures is, the rumor has it, as he's making his way back to Canaan, 400 soldiers representing Esau's family are coming out to meet them. So the caravans going south are met by the soldiers going north. And Jacob has a plan. Okay, so I'm going to recognize that I messed up early, and I'm going to send a bunch of gifts forward in the caravans. And that's what he does. He sends a bunch of property forward to give to Esau. Then, thinking that maybe he would soften Esau's mood and everything, he sends his wives, concubines. Did I say marriage was complicated? Wives, concubines, and all the children from the wives and concubines forward, thinking, well, he won't take them out, so maybe he'll be milder by the time he gets to me. And while they're crossing that river Jabbok, they go forward, and in the night, he goes down to the river to pray. And when he goes down there and face this person, this angel, this divine figure. This is one of the most cryptic stories in all the Old Testament because we really don't know who he wrestled with. But he wrestled with what he believed was a divine figure. And they wrestled the night away. And I think sometimes that maybe his wrestling was more a dream. Have you ever had one dream that's so real to you that you can almost feel it? That maybe you wake up in the morning with a black eye or a bruise because you ran into something in the process of negotiating that dream? Or maybe it was his own conscience getting back at him. Maybe it was his fear of having to face the life that he had lived. Maybe any one of those things brought him to that moment. But as the day breaks, the divine figure says, Let me go. Let me go. I can't be here when the sun comes up. And he says, no, I will not let you go until you bless me. And he gives him the new name, Israel, because he struggled with God. He struggled with God. Now, the rest of the story is really kind of an amazing thing. All the gifts have gone forward, all the wives, all the children, and things like that. And when Jacob, now Israel, goes out to meet his brother comes running to him, wraps his arms around him. In tears, he hugs him, he cares for him, he kisses him. He doesn't want the gifts. He says, no, you don't need to give me the gifts. He says, please, Israel says, please take them anyway. Take these gifts. They symbolize my own brokenness and my own need for restorative justice. Take these, please. And he says, no. It is good that we are together again. That a forgiveness has actually taken place at this point. And it sets Jacob, now Israel's identity, on a whole new journey. It puts him in the line of his children. You will know later one of them is Joseph. And Joseph is the one who, though betrayed by his own brothers, in the very end of Genesis says, what you meant for evil, God has taken and done good with, and forgiven his own brothers. And it sets the Genesis story on a new way of understanding how we live our lives in relationship to God. This is an amazing story, and it reminds me that maybe Penuel, the place where you meet God face to face, is a reckoning that we all have personally, where we don't need to strive so hard to fix all the pieces, but we look for where is God doing a restorative act, and we look for where that can lead going forward. But it's not also an individual kind of thing. As the rabbis remind us, there's not a single person mentioned in Genesis that doesn't represent a whole corporate reality of other people. So Israel could be our own communities where we find ourselves. And if this political world that we live in right now, can we imagine, can we wrestle with God to see where the restorative possibilities are? In our lives, in our work, can we find that restorative possibility? Can we struggle with God through the night long enough to see that there may be another direction that restores a possibility that maybe we had not seen? This is a fascinating possibility. I even think about Israel as the nation. Do they need to struggle the night with the path they're on for the sake of a restorative possibility that they have not seen? What about the nation of the United States? We find ourselves needing a night where we wrestle with God. Penuel, a place of struggle with God for the sake of seeing a new path that God may lead. Where's your Penuel?